The clerk at the county recorder's window didn't look up when I set the brass key on the counter. It made a hard, bell-like sound on the laminate, one clean note that turned 3 heads in the line behind me. I kept my voice low so it carried. "Run today's notary journal again," I said. "Line 14. Her fingers stopped over the keyboard. The room was ordinary: fluorescent lights, bulletin boards with lost pet flyers, a rack of voter registration forms, but the air turned tight, like a bus taking a curve too fast. She glanced from the key to my face. "Ma'am, we ran it already." "Then run it one more time," I said, sliding the tiny voice recorder from my pocket and laying it beside the key. "And this time, don't skip any entries." Something moved in her expression, the small instinct that tells a person to be careful around facts. She typed. The printer coughed. The line behind me went quiet enough to hear a child's sneaker squeak once on the tile. She read, went pale, and whispered, "This line, it's blank. 14 is missing." The word "missing" didn't echo, but it might as well have. A man at the end of the counter stopped filling out his form. A security guard shifted near the door. I didn't look away from the clerk. I said, "Please call your supervisor and the hospital compliance officer. I have a recording they both need to hear." I left the brass key in the center of the counter where anyone could see it. It wasn't a house key. It was a transit key, an old farebox vault key from my years behind the wheel of a city bus. It opened boxes designed to keep honest people honest and count liars in small metal clicks. I had carried that key on my last route. I carried it now for the same reason, because sometimes the truth needs hardware. My name is Loretta Hayes, and I drove a city bus in Columbus, Ohio for 31 years and 3 months. Last winter, I got a minor scare in the emergency room and woke to discover I was no longer trusted to sign my own checks. A stranger with a pleasant voice told me at the bank that your agent under power of attorney has made adjustments, and the app on my phone closed its face like a shell. I went home and took a deep breath, and then, for the first time in my life, I pressed record. I didn't plan to make a scene in a county building. I didn't plan to turn my son's life inside out in front of a room full of strangers. I planned a nice, quiet retirement with coupons and morning coffee and church on Sundays. But when someone edits you out of your own life, you only get 2 choices: shrink or knock. I knocked. The morning the bank locked me out, the sky over my little ranch house was February gray, the kind of gray we know by name, the kind that sits low and dull over the Kroger and the auto parts store and the old bowling alley with the broken sign. I put on my jacket out of habit, even though I was inside, because for 31 years I started every day at 4:15 with a jacket, and habits are superstition's cousins. My son, Aaron, had called me the week before with the voice he uses when he's about to disappoint me and wants to make it sound noble. He's 36 and handsome and tired, with a good heart buried under 2 tons of bravado. "Ma," he said, "I finally got the last mile contract. Couple of runs a day to the warehouse on Alum Creek. It's starting. I told you I just needed time." "I'm glad," I said, "because mothers are taught to bake encouragement the way we bake biscuits, on autopilot." I did not say that I knew about the predatory insurance he'd signed on the truck. I did not say that for 5 months I had quietly paid those premiums to keep him from choosing the kind of loan that chains men's ankles. I did not say I was tired down to my bones. I said I was glad. Then I poured my coffee, cut my coupons, and pretended not to hear the second voice on his end of the line, Tessa, coaching him in whispers. Tessa is younger than Aaron by 3 years and older than him by 15 in the way she watches a room. Pretty, ambitious, careful. She sells an idea of herself for a living on the internet and has a gift for discovering what other people want to be and charging them to pretend. She's polite to me the way people are polite to stop signs. The bank app flashed red that morning. Contact your branch. I did. A woman there sounded apologetic but firm. Miss Hayes, your agent under durable power of attorney enabled restricted view for your online profile. We're required to honor it. I don't have an agent, I said. Yes, ma'am, you do, she said. We have a notarized copy on file dated last Thursday. The word notarized broke over me like ice water. I hung up, sat at the cable, and stared at the place where my coffee had left a ring. Then I stood, fetched the fireproof lockbox from my bedroom closet, and opened the manila folders labeled House, Pension, Health, no power of attorney. No discussion, no form, no signature. I had signed a lot of things in my life. I had not signed that. I called Aaron. He didn't pick up. I called again. He picked up on the third and said, "Hey, Ma, can I call you later? I'm with a shipper." "There's a power of attorney at the bank," I said. "It says I have an agent." Silence. Not the kind where he's thinking of the truth, the kind where he's choosing how to land the lie. "Yeah, that's just the hospital proxy for that little ER thing. They needed someone listed. Tessa handled it. It's just a help." Help, I repeated. The word tasted like the dust behind a vending machine. "Aaron, did I sign a power of attorney?" "Ma, it's just forms. You were out of it. They needed signatures. We're just making sure bills are paid." And I was out of it, I said, for 3 hours after they gave me a sedative and told me not to drive. That does not make me incompetent. I remember the nurse's earrings. I remember the cuff pressure. I did not sign a power of attorney. "Ma," he said, dropping his voice into that pleading basement tone he thinks still works on me. "We're trying to keep everything smooth. I've got this contract. The bank will freak if anything hiccups. Tessa just said, put Tessa on." There was a shuffle. Tessa came on sounding bright. "Hi, Loretta. You gave us such a scare, but you're fine, so praise God, right? Don't worry about the paperwork. I printed everything from a template, super standard." "The bank says I have an agent," I said. "Who is my agent?" "Not a big deal. We're just making sure no fraud happens while you recover. Aaron's under a lot of stress with the business, and we need to streamline your finances so we can help you budget as a family." "As a family," I said. I looked at the brass transit key in the bowl on my counter. I hadn't carried it since I turned in my bus, but I keep keys like some people keep shells. It was heavy in my palm. "Tessa, who is my agent?" She hesitated 1 second too long. Then she said, too fast, "Aaron is, but it's durable only for health and financial oversight in case you're incapacitated." And "I am not incapacitated," I said. "Of course not," she said. "This is just preventative. It's a best practice. You know how there are scammers out there. Elderly vulnerability is—" She stopped because I had hung up. I sat at the table, pressed my thumb against the transit key until the teeth bit my skin, and thought. I am not a lawyer. I am not tech savvy. I am not interested in making enemies. But for 31 years and 3 months, I learned this. Routes run on 3 things: time, sequence, and proof. If you can't prove when the bus was where it says it was, people get hurt. The world is quieter than a bus, but it runs the same way. I called Marlon. Marlon Pierce was the mechanic who could listen to an engine and tell you which bolt wanted an apology. He's 71 now, retired, and still wears shirts with his name stitched over the pocket because he's proud of having done work you can point to. He picked up on ring 2. "Retirement treating you funny, Retta?" he said. "Funny enough," I said. "You ever see a notary stamp without the right sequence?" He whistled low. "Tell me what you got." I told him about the bank, the call, the hospital. I left out the 5 months of truck insurance because shame doesn't sit well in a man's ear who loves you. He listened, the way some men reserve for engines and a few reserve for friends. You get a copy yet, he asked. Not yet, I said. They said I could pick it up at the branch. Pick it up, he said, then bring it to the Union Hall. I want to see the stamp. By noon, I had a copy. Paper warm from the branch printer, clipped in a blue folder. I carried it into the Union Hall like a truant student carrying a note. The place smelled like coffee and oil and the faint ghost of fresh rain that the old floorboards had memorized. Marlon put on his glasses and looked at the stamp. Ohio notaries number their journal entries sequential, he said, tapping the tiny line of numbers at the bottom. Date, entry, signer. This one says journal entry 1475. The stamp's fine. What's the line above say? It says it was done at the hospital bedside, I said. Marlon tilted his head. Any witness other than the notary and the signer? It lists a witness, I said, reading. Initials T.G. He leaned back, eyebrows up. T.G. as in Tessa Greer? I didn't answer because I didn't need to. You need the notary's journal, he said. You need to see line 1475 with your own eyes. How? I asked. You do it politely, he said. You go to the county, you ask if there's a complaint procedure. You don't accuse, you ask how to make sure you understand what you signed. And he reached under the counter and laid something on the table with a little clack. You take this. It was a tiny voice recorder, black with a scratched up screen. I kept it in the fare box when we were getting shorted. Not legal to record certain places without notice, but legal to record your own conversations, legal to keep notes, legal to keep receipts. I'm not looking for trouble, I said. He smiled without humor. Trouble is a dog that follows you home when you feed it. You stop feeding it today. I slid the recorder into my jacket pocket and felt the ridiculous urge to cry. I didn't. I went home, I ate a peanut butter sandwich, I made a list on a yellow pad that said in my own handwriting, big as a billboard, do not be afraid of your own life. The hospital didn't want to show me anything. The first person I spoke to, a young man with a badge that said admissions, smiled so hard his cheeks looked tired. Ma'am, the form is on file. It's standard. You consented to an agent in case you were unable to. I want to see what I signed and the notary's log. Then I want your compliance officer, I said, and please note on the record that I am requesting a review for potential fraud. He looked alarmed. People get brave or careful when you say fraud. He got careful. I'll call, he said. Please have a seat. The seat was vinyl, and the light above it was too cold. I pressed record in my pocket and spoke softly. Loretta Hayes, Tuesday, 2:14 p.m., OSU East, admissions desk, requesting compliance review. I did it because my own voice sounded like authority when a room wanted me to forget I had any. A woman named Patel came down 10 minutes later in scrubs and a cardigan. She introduced herself as Patient Rights. She didn't smile like an apology. She smiled like a person who had slept. Ms. Hayes, she said, let's talk. We did. Slowly. I told her what the bank said, what the branch printed, what my memory held like the smell of gasoline. She didn't argue. She wrote as I talked, and then she said, if you did not sign this, or if you signed under sedative, or if the notary did not witness correctly, you have rights. We will initiate an internal review. You can also request the notary's journal. The county recorder can advise. If you'd like, I'll attend that meeting. Please, I said, and I meant the thank you as something heavier than courtesy. When I got home, there was a bag hanging on my doorknob with a note in handwriting I didn't recognize.
It said in neat, confident print, "We needed to streamline for your own good. Love, T." Inside were my checkbook, a list of my online passwords written wrong, and a bottle of collagen vitamins. I sat on the porch step and looked at the street. A mail truck rattled past. A neighbor's wind chime made 4 little notes that could have been a child's rhyme. I felt that peculiar sensation grief brings, the one where you look at the world acting normal and want to stand up and tell it there's been a mistake.
I didn't take the bait. I put the vitamins in the pantry next to the canned peaches. I took my checkbook and slid it under the telephone the way my mother did, because sometimes your enemy is panic, not people. Then I made soup with what I had. No meat, no onions. I did not want to cry over onions on top of everything else. Aaron called at 8. "Ma," he said, voice soft, the way men are soft when they want you to surrender. "Tessa was trying to help. Don't make this a thing." "It is a thing," I said. "You gave someone who is not me the keys to my life." "You were confused," he said quickly, "at the ER." "I was not confused," I said. "I was honest. There's a difference." "Come on," he said, laughter at the edge like he was trying to charm me from the other side of a ditch. "You're being dramatic." "Give me back my online banking," I said. "We will," he said. Look, Ma, if we keep your accounts in view, we can make sure nobody takes advantage of you. You know how many seniors get scammed." "By strangers," I said. "I do." "That's what we're preventing," he said. "Family keeps you safe." I said nothing, because lies sound loudest in silence, and I wanted him to hear his. We hung up with a truth that wasn't a truce. I slept in bursts, dreams of brakes and ice and a bus that wouldn't slow. I woke at 5, made coffee, wrote out a budget on my yellow pad, and found I could not see the numbers for the water. I called Marlon. "We go to the county today," I said. He picked me up at 10 in his old Ford, which still smelled like cigarettes in a way that made me forgive his doctor for failing to scare him straight. "You got that recorder?" I didn't take the bait. I put the vitamins in the pantry next to the canned peaches. I took my checkbook and slid it under the telephone the way my mother did, because sometimes your enemy is panic, not people. Then I made soup with what I had. No meat, no onions. I did not want to cry over onions on top of everything else. Aaron called at 8. "Ma," he said, voice soft, the way men are soft when they want you to surrender. "Tessa was trying to help. Don't make this a thing." "It is a thing," I said. "You gave someone who is not me the keys to my life." "You were confused," he said quickly, "at the ER." "I was not confused," I said. "I was honest. There's a difference." "Come on," he said, laughter at the edge like he was trying to charm me from the other side of a ditch. "You're being dramatic." "Give me back my online banking," I said. "We will," he said. Look, Ma, if we keep your accounts in view, we can make sure nobody takes advantage of you. You know how many seniors get scammed." "By strangers," I said. "I do." "That's what we're preventing," he said. "Family keeps you safe." I said nothing, because lies sound loudest in silence, and I wanted him to hear his. We hung up with a truth that wasn't a truce. I slept in bursts, dreams of brakes and ice and a bus that wouldn't slow. I woke at 5, made coffee, wrote out a budget on my yellow pad, and found I could not see the numbers for the water. I called Marlon. "We go to the county today," I said. He picked me up at 10 in his old Ford, which still smelled like cigarettes in a way that made me forgive his doctor for failing to scare him straight. "You got that recorder?" he asked. "In my pocket," I said. "Good," he said. "Remember, you ain't here to win a fight. You're here to open a door." "I know doors," I said, patting the brass key in my coat. "I've opened a few." The county recorder's office is a modest place for the power it holds: deeds, marriages, liens, mistakes. A young woman at the counter looked out with that smile government workers keep for when they know the person on the other side thinks they're the enemy. I said, "Good morning," like my voice could make a room easy. "How can I help you?" she asked. "I need to review a notary's journal entry," I said. "I believe there is a discrepancy." She blinked. "We don't keep notary journals here," she said. "I understand," I said. "I was told the recorder can advise and contact the notary for a review if there's a complaint." She studied my face for a second and then nodded. "Let me get my supervisor." The supervisor had short hair and boots that said she believed in dry socks. She introduced herself as Keisha. She asked me to explain slowly. I did. I placed the bank's copy of the POA on the counter between us, and she studied the stamp like it was a photograph of a person she might be able to find in a crowd. "We can contact the notary," she said. "We can request to view the journal for the date and entry listed here. If the notary refuses, we have next steps. Do you allege forgery?" I let the words sit. Then I said, "I allege I did not sign this. And if I did, I allege I was under sedative and do not recall being witnessed by a notary. I allege that if someone signed for me, they did so without my consent." Her jaw worked once, thoughtful. She didn't write anything down for a moment because she was making a decision about how seriously to take an older woman who sounded certain. Then she said, "Wait here. I'm going to make some calls." I touched the recorder in my pocket for calm and took my hand away because I didn't want to look like I needed a talisman to tell the truth. The call took 10 minutes. She came back with a single sheet. "The notary will bring her journal within the hour," she said. "You can view the relevant page with the sensitive entries covered. She understands the nature of the complaint, if that's acceptable." "It is," I said. "Thank you." Marlon leaned against a pillar and crossed his arms like a man at a drag race waiting for the light to change. I stood straight because I wanted my shoulders to remember something they learned long before my son's voice got deep. 45 minutes later, a woman in a cream sweater and flats arrived with a leather-bound book. The notary. She looked younger than Tessa, older than my granddaughter would be if I had one, and very tired. She introduced herself, set the journal on the counter, and slid open a plastic sleeve. Keisha stood between us like a referee who hates fights but has learned to count to 10. She flipped to the date on the stamp. She laid a straight edge across the page so only a single line showed. The line was numbered 1474. Names, ID number, signature. Below it, white space, and then 1476. Keisha's breathing changed the same way mine did. "There's no 1475, she said quietly. The notary swallowed. I must have... You must have what? Keisha said softly. Numbers don't skip. The notary flushed. I was called to a bedside. A family member said she had authorization. The patient was resting. They told me they had a proxy and that the patient had indicated consent earlier. And did the patient sign? Keisha asked. The notary's eyes flicked to the journal. I have a signature on the form, she said. I asked about your journal, Keisha said. Did the patient sign here? The notary pressed her lips together. I left that line to complete later, she said. It was busy. I had 2 more calls. I planned to come back and numbers don't skip, Keisha said again, like a line on a chalkboard she wanted the room to learn. Would you like to hear a recording? I asked, voice level, because when you take the recorder out too fast, you look like you plan to win. I have a conversation relevant to this. Keisha nodded. I placed the recorder on the counter beside the brass key and pressed play. Tessa's voice came out small and tinny and perfect. If anyone asks about notarization, say you were bedside, you verified identity, and the patient nodded. They won't push past that. The notary closed her eyes. Keisha didn't move. Marlon's hands tightened over his forearms. Keisha turned off the recorder with one finger. We'll need hospital compliance present, she said. I'm calling them now. Please do, I said. I asked for them already. You don't expect a county office to feel like church, but while we waited for the compliance officer from the hospital, the air turned reverent. Not for me, for the idea that records matter and numbers are small promises people make to each other so the big ones don't get broken. The compliance officer arrived, a short woman in scrubs with a badge that said Patel. She listened, she asked to play the recording again, she requested a copy. She asked the notary a question, so gentle it made me ache. Were you pressured? She said. The notary nodded, a small, desperate motion. They said she needed it to keep her safe. They said she'd agreed in triage. They said I'd cost the family money if I didn't stamp.
Who was they? Keisha asked. The notary lifted her eyes and looked at me like she couldn't bear to say it. The son and his fiancée, she said. I felt something move inside me, not a knife, a key turning. Patel put her hand on the counter like she was placing something to anchor the room. Miss Hayes, she said, we're going to rescind the proxy at the hospital and notify the bank that the durable power is under dispute. The notary may face an inquiry. We'll schedule a formal joint review. Do you want to file a police report? I want to make sure my son has a chance to tell the truth before the police have to make him, I said. Patel nodded once. Keisha breathed out for the first time in 5 minutes. Marlon tapped the brass key like a victory drum one time, soft, as if the room might break if he celebrated too loud. On the way home, my phone buzzed 6 times in my purse. I didn't look. When I pulled into my driveway, Aaron was sitting on my step, cheeks raw from the cold and from worry, and Tessa stood 3 paces behind him like a coach who just realized she'd sent the wrong play. Ma, Aaron said, standing as I got out, his hands up in surrender. Listen, did you forge my signature? No light, no warmth. Years of yes ma'ams and sure huns can distance a woman from her own voice. Mine found me on the lawn. No, he said fast. No, I didn't. Tessa said you had the right to protect her, Tessa said, stepping in, smile tight, eyes bright with the kind of anger that convinces itself it's righteous. She could have been scammed. Look at the news. Do you want her to lose the house? Don't point at my house, I said. It knows the truth and it doesn't like being lied to. Tessa's mouth twitched like she wanted to laugh and remembered in time it would sound like contempt. We were trying to help, she said. You were trying to control, I said. You used the word streamline. That means you want me to move where you point. Loretta, Aaron said, voice cracking at the edges like old paint. I messed up. I'm behind on the truck. I didn't want to ask you again. Tessa said this would make me forget I had a name, I asked. Make me into an account with a pulse? He flinched, and for a second I saw the boy who stood crying in a kitchen in a secondhand t-shirt when his father left. I do not forgive because I remember a boy. I forgive when the man speaks a plain sentence and stands under it. Ma, he said, I screwed up. I lied. I was ashamed. I didn't forge your name. I let someone else run me, and I didn't stop it. I'm sorry. I'll fix it.
Good, I said. Start now. Tessa stepped in again because people who love control hate exits. Loretta, the way you talk to him is why he can't tell you things, she said. You make everything a moral failing. He's trying to build something. Don't be the reason he can't. I kept a man's routes for 3 decades, I said. I know what building is. It isn't hiding in a hospital hallway. It isn't teaching someone with a ring on their finger to talk like a banker. It is standing in front of the people you hurt and telling them you did it. Fine, she snapped. We'll go, but when you get scammed, don't call us. I called the county, I said, and the hospital, and a mechanic. They did more for me today than your streamlining. She rolled her eyes and went to the car. Aaron didn't move. Ma, he said, soft, let me make it right. I believe in making right, I said, but I'm done feeding trouble. Listen carefully. You will call the bank today and revoke any access you provided. You will call the hospital and request the joint review. You will sit in that room and tell the truth, and you will bring every bill with your name on it to my table, and we will draw lines. What I will do, what I will not do. No more secret payments from me to keep you feeling like a man. Do you understand? I do, he said, because he always says I do when he wants to make a woman stop talking. Then he looked up and met my eyes like a man on the edge of water who knows it's time to get in. I do, he said again, from somewhere deeper. He called the bank from my porch. The woman on the phone asked to verify my identity. I verified it with my birthday and the cross street nearest my childhood home and the last 4 of a number I hadn't said aloud in years. When she said, access restored, I sat down on the step because my knees tried to fold. That night, the lights in my house felt brighter, not because someone turned them up, because fear carries a small fog with it, and when you push it outside, everything sharpens. I made tea. I called Patel and thanked her for being the kind of person who didn't mistake anyone's age for their ability to remember what a pen should be for. Then I sat with my yellow pad and wrote new rules. No secret help. No shame payments. No, for your own good, I didn't agree to. My name is mine. I slept. Not all the way. Not like water. But the dreams did not have ice in them. The joint review was scheduled for Thursday at 10. I wore my old Union jacket because I wanted to smell like men who keep promises. I walked into the county room with Marlon on my left and Patel on my right. Keisha had set up 3 chairs at one end of a long table. Across from us, Aaron hovered like a man about to be called into the principal's office, and Tessa stood in a red blazer like a person who likes to be seen. The notary was there too, pale and small. She didn't look at me. I didn't look at her, because I am not a judge. I am a mother and a bus driver and a person who believes in handles on things that get heavy. Keisha explained the process. Patel explained it again in gentler words. The notary opened her journal to the date in question and slid the straight edge along the page. Keisha pointed. There is a missing entry. The stamp on the document references an entry that does not exist. That is a problem. Tessa started speaking.
She uses words like rope. She throws them fast and wraps herself in them and calls it safety. We were in a crisis, she said. Loretta was disoriented. She asked me to handle her forms. We did what any reasonable family would do to prevent exploitation. We are talking about optimizing. Stop, Patel said. Not loud, not rude, but like a person who says stop when a child is about to touch a stove. You do not get to use the word optimize and the word family in the same sentence and call it care.
Excuse me, Tessa said, offended in a way that looks like jewelry. Excused, Patel said. This meeting is about Miss Hayes's rights. Aaron looked at me. Ma, he said, voice low, I'm sorry. I said, say it to the room. He turned, swallowed, and made the choice I had begged for with my whole life. I lied, he said. I told the notary my mother had agreed. She had not. I told Tessa it was fine. It was not. I was ashamed of my debt, and I didn't want to ask my mother because I have asked my mother for 36 years like a man with an empty bucket standing beside a river he refuses to learn to cross. I am sorry. Thank you, Keisha said. The notary spoke, voice threadbare. I failed my duty, she said. I will report myself. Patel took notes, each pen stroke a little mercy. Miss Hayes, would you like to press charges? I thought about brokenness, how it sits in people and makes them clever when they should be kind. I thought about my son at 10, proud of a ribbon for attendance. I thought about Tessa at 13 maybe, deciding that pretty could be a weapon or a shield and picking weapon because shields are heavy to carry alone. Then I thought about my house and my name and the paper at the bank that tried to erase both. I want this revoked, I said. I want the bank notified in writing that I am my own agent. I want a note on my account that no durable power may be established by anyone but me with 3 witnesses at the branch. I want the notary to keep her job if she can learn from this, because we need honest notaries more than we need martyrs. I want my son held accountable by the only person who can actually do it, himself.
Patel nodded. Keisha nodded. The notary cried once, a single tear, then closed a journal and held it as if it had asked her to be better and she had said yes. Tessa adjusted her blazer. This is theater, she muttered. Loretta, you are making this a performance. I turned and looked at her with the calm I had to earn. This is record, I said. That's different. She left. She left, and the room lightened by a few ounces because the air didn't have to hold her anymore. Aaron stayed. He signed what he had to sign to undo what he had done. He shook hands with the notary because shame can make a man cruel, and it can make him human. He chose the second. Then he turned to me. I'm broke, he said simply. I'm sorry. I need help. But I don't want yours the way I've taken it. Tell me what I can ask for that isn't stealing. We sat at my kitchen table that afternoon with a pile of bills between us like a small city. I made coffee strong enough to stand a spoon. I kept my yellow pad in front of me like a compass, not a weapon. We categorized truck insurance, fuel, warehouse rent, personal credit cards, a streaming service he pays for that made my mouth twitch into a smile I hid by taking a sip. 2 things, I said. I will not give you cash. I will, for 60 days, drive you to night work if you get it, or pay for a bus pass. I will take you to a credit counselor at the church who works miracles if people bring their whole truth. I will not fix the truck. I will not call anyone on your behalf. I will not be your streamlining. I will be your mother, which means I will love you while you sweat.
He nodded, head bowed, not in shame, but in concentration. Okay, he said. Okay. Also, I said, you will have a therapist.
He laughed, reflexive. Ma, you will have a therapist, I repeated, because there are sentences that aren't a debate. If the first one doesn't fit, you will try another. If you cannot afford it, you will go to the community clinic on Parsons where they take walk-ins on Tuesdays. He stopped laughing. Okay, he said again. Okay. We built a plan that was a ladder, not a trampoline. It had rungs made of real things. Shift work at a warehouse, a second interview at a parts store, a meeting with a man who runs a second chance training at the community college. It had a date at the top that said reevaluate in 90 days. It had a promise from me to feed him on Sundays only if he brought his own Tupperware and asked me about my week first. Ask you about your week, he repeated, like he was learning a new route. Okay. When he left, the house felt different. Not empty. Mine. On Saturday, I went to the church kitchen for pantry day and found that the woman who runs it had broken her wrist. Someone needed to portion soup and label quarts for delivery to shut-ins. I have never believed in coincidences that arrive the week you take your name back. I ladled, I labeled, I watched 3 young men load coolers into a rusted van, and I thought about food trucks and a lot across from the high school on Friday nights when the stands are lit and people are hungry and their hearts are open because the band played their song. I thought about the women I had driven to work for years who quit jobs to start catering businesses from their kitchens. I thought for the first time since my retirement party about starting something that would not require me to rescue anyone, but would feed the part of me that never learned how to sit still. The following week, I put a flyer on the bulletin board at church and at the Union Hall. Community Food Truck Co-op Interest Meeting, Sunday, 3 p.m. Bring a recipe, not a resume. Bring your cousin who makes that corn you brag about. Bring a cooler if you have one. Bring your whole self. 10 people came. 12 the next week. Someone brought a grill, someone brought a permit application, someone's nephew made a logo on his laptop. Someone said, "Can we call it Root Kitchen?" And everyone laughed because sometimes a joke is a brand waiting for a sign to hang its hat on. Marlon showed up with a folding table and a box of plastic tokens. Old fair tokens, he said, pouring them into a coffee can. We'll use them for folks who can't pay. Pay it forward jar. 2 tokens buys a plate. The jar stays full because this town will surprise you if you let it. One night in April, we served food in the parking lot behind the library. Chili from my mother's recipe, elotes with lime, a chicken curry that made a man in a work vest close his eyes like prayer. A girl of 8 handed me a token and said, "My Nana says you used to drive her to dialysis." "I did," I said. "She's late to everything because her laugh takes up more time than anyone else's." "She does laugh loud," the girl said, delighted to be known. We bought a second-hand truck with a griddle that hums like it knows secrets. We painted it a forgiving blue and put the logo on the side in letters a tired person could read from the curb. We keep a chalkboard menu that changes when somebody's greens come up or a cousin drops off tomatoes at the church. Aaron came by on a Tuesday in May. He had grease under his nails and a look in his eyes that wasn't panic. "Got the night shift," he said. "Warehouse on Lockbourne. Benefits after 90. Missed my streaming shows. And guess what? The world kept turning." "Imagine that," I said, ladling chili. He held up a certificate. He said, "Finished the budgeting class. Look, they gave me a paper for it because apparently I'm 5 and need stickers." "You and me both," I said. "I kept every ribbon you ever got." He looked at the token jar and then at me. He said, "You're doing something carefully." Admiration trying to sneak past his pride. This is good." "It is," I said, "better with help." I nodded toward a man sanding a wooden counter for the truck window. "That's Mr. Dunn, woodshop teacher, widower. He can fix anything with hands, which is rarer than most folks think." Aaron looked between us and smiled in a way that said he was noticing I had a life he wasn't invited to dissect. Good, he said. You deserve a squad.
He ate. He asked me about my week first. It felt less like a rule and more like a habit we had both chosen. He told me about therapy. He said, "She asked me who I am without a crisis to keep me interesting." I said I didn't know. She said, "Good. Go find out." In June, the county sent a letter with an official stamp that said the POA attempt had been formally voided and the notary had received a reprimand and extra training. It also said the hospital had updated its bedside notarization procedures to require an ethics consult when family requests intersect with sedation. I put the letter in my house folder and slipped a copy behind the magnet on my fridge, because some victories should stay visible. Tessa sent Aaron a text that said, "You made me look like a monster," and then another that said, "I forgive you," which is the kind of thing people say when two mirrors had been too close together for too long and both cracked. She moved on to a story where she was the hero and the audience clapped. That story did not have me in it. Good. I began to sleep all the way to morning, more often than not. On nights when I couldn't, I stood at my sink and looked out at my small backyard where a patch of mint had taken over and wanted to apologize for it. I thought about the bus stops I used to watch, people missing on purpose, people putting on their work faces, people carrying their lives in tote bags. I thought about the women who shouldered things so heavy their bones had to get creative. I whisper to them sometimes through my window screen like prayer. You can tell them no. You are allowed to eat first. Your name is your name. The summer thunderheads came like old teachers, loud, necessary, full of tests. On the hottest day of July, the food truck's latch stuck and a line of customers waited while I fought it. A man stepped up, hands gentle, and said, "May I?" He wiggled the latch, listened, set a shoulder against the frame, and the door slipped into place like it remembered it had a home. He smiled and wiped sawdust from his forearm. "Mr. Dunn." He said, "Sometimes metal needs to be reminded which direction is home."
People, too, I said. He nodded. People especially. We fed a construction crew for free that day because the token jar was overflowing and the foreman cried into his wrist when he thought no one could see. People are hungrier than they want to admit for food and for sentences that tell them they belong. In August, Aaron got a promotion. Shift lead. He brought me a plant I had to look up on my phone because its leaves were too pretty for my common sense. "For your porch," he said, standing on the step where he once lied and told me I was safer with my life in his pocket. Thanks. "You're welcome," I said. "For real this time. You're welcome." He hesitated. Do you ever think I could make it right? Not just with you, with me." "Yes," I said, "because anything else would be me playing God when my job is to make chili and keep tokens in the jar." But right isn't a destination, it's directions. You check them as often as it takes. On a Friday night under stadium lights, a girl pressed her face to the truck window and said, "This is the best thing I ever ate," which is how you get a woman to cry at a cash drawer. Mr. Dunn saw it and pretended to look for napkins. Marlon slapped the side of the truck like you do when you love something and don't want to break it by saying so. Fall came with big skies and small mercies. I refinanced my little house on my terms because the county letter made the mortgage officer sit up straighter than his chair. We set up a Pay What You Can Wednesday. I added a sign to the truck that said, "Kindly tell me your name so I can say it back to you." It slowed the line and sped up our hearts.
One evening in October, a parent from the high school stopped by and asked if I would speak to a group of juniors about money and boundaries and what to do when someone you love speaks the language of control like it's the only one they learned at home. I said yes and wrote bullet points for the first time since retirement. The kids listened the way teenagers only do when you tell them something true with the word because after it. You can say no, I said, because love is not a debit card. You can write down your rules because your brain will try to forget them when someone you love is crying. You can ask for receipts because trust is a high compliment, not a substitute for proof.
In November, the church kitchen rolled into the co-op. We licensed the program with the community college to let second chance trainees log hours with us. A woman named Deirdre came in with a face like a door and left 6 weeks later with a laugh you could fold laundry to. She took over Wednesday greens. She writes her name on the chalkboard with a heart over the I, even though she pretends she doesn't. Sometimes, late after a long night of serving, I set the brass transit key on the truck's stainless counter. I like to see the light bounce off it. It's a reminder that there are two kinds of authority in the world, the kind that tells and the kind that knows. I am not interested in telling. I want to be the woman at the counter who can say, "Run the number again. Today's line. Don't skip." One Sunday in Advent, Aaron brought a woman to church with hair that looked like it had decided to be its own weather system and a smile that didn't apologize. Her name was Kim. She asked me about the transit key like it was a story she could sit down inside. She didn't talk over him. When he said, "I used to blame everyone," she squeezed his hand once and said nothing. I liked her because she acted like the world is big enough for adults. After the service, Aaron stood by my truck and stared at the jar of tokens. He reached in, took one, and turned it over in his hand. "For luck," he said, offering it to a boy watching from behind his mother's leg. "Keep it," I said to the boy. "You'll need the ride one day." He ran his thumb over the metal and grinned at his mother like he was holding currency no one else knew how to spend. I get asked sometimes if I regret not pressing charges, if I made it too easy on the notary, on my son, on the woman who liked to optimize other people's choices. Regret is a kind of storytelling. So is mercy. I chose the story where my son could stand in a room and say, "I lied," and learn to love the sound it makes when a lie falls apart. I chose the story where a notary keeps a job and becomes the kind of person who will get up from her breakfast table in 20 years to drive across town to help a patient because she remembers what her journal taught her. I chose the story where I stop being a rescue boat and become a kitchen with a door anyone can use if they bring their own hands. This is not a fairy tale. The truck breaks, insurance renewals arrive with numbers that make us all laugh, the desperate laugh of the working. My knees hurt when the weather changes, and sometimes I look at my phone and whisper, don't ring," like a truce between me and the world. But on most days, when the lot is warm with fryer heat and somebody is cussing the tomatoes for being stubborn and Marlon says we're out of foil and Deirdre sings badly to the radio and a customer says, "Are you the one who used to drive the number 7? And I say, "Baby, I drove 'em all." I feel more like myself than I did the week the bank app closed its eye. On a cold night in January, the county mailed me a laminated card I didn't ask for but kept anyway. It's not a power of attorney. It's a statement of wishes and boundaries, signed by me and witnessed by 2 people who know my handwriting. It says 3 things in short lines. I am Loretta Hayes. I will ask for help when I need it and choose who gets to give it. No one speaks my name at a bank or hospital without my say-so. I slid the card into my wallet behind a photograph of Aaron at 7 with a missing tooth and another of my bus, the day I stepped off it and kissed my fingers and touched the door because I knew I would miss the sound it made when the brake released. There are nights when the wind blows hard enough to make the truck rock on its tires, and I sit in the cab for a minute before locking up, palms on the steering wheel, remembering 1,000 mornings of roots and rain and people who met their lives at my door.
I think about the woman I was when I walked into the county office with a brass key and a recorder and a voice that refused to whisper. I think about the clerk's face when the printer spit out a blank where a number should have been, and how that blank saved me. If you are listening because your life feels like a line went missing where your name ought to be, hear me. You do not have to shake your fist at the sky to take your life back. You can walk into a room, put a small old key on a counter and say, "Run the line again." You can write your rules on a yellow pad. You can say no to the people you love and yes to the person you were before anyone taught you that love means surrendering receipts.
One evening, a girl from the high school set down 2 tokens and said, "My mom says you told the county what to do." I laughed. "No, honey," I said, ladling chili. "I asked the county to do what it already promised." She thought about that, then nodded, like she understood more than the sentence. She took her plate, waved, and ran to join her friends. Marlon locked the side latch and patted the truck. "You good, Retta?" he asked. "I am," I said, and meant it. "I'm home." We turned off the lights. The parking lot went dark, then silver under the winter moon. I slipped the brass key back into my pocket. It was warm in my palm. A small piece of metal, just enough to turn something that had been locked too long.